Okay, we're learning about, done a couple of shiurim here on Olam Shana Nefesh, and how the whole world, just to review this couple of sentences, how the whole world is Ba'olam Shana Nefesh, in the creation of the world. It says the Sefer Yetzirah, which is a book of creation, is Hashem created. You can divide the whole creation into three dimensions: the dimension of space, the dimension of time. It was a chiddush of HaKadosh Baruch Hu when He created the world. He created time, and humans, but it's not just humans as opposed to animals, let's say, or birds. But the shot is the human experience of that is all part of the creation of the world. There's something, there's a nefesh which is experiencing the, as the Sefer Yetzirah says, the Ein Sof in this world. So that's Olam Shana Nefesh. And here he says as follows, this is where we're up to. Ubizman v'shana, Zman and Shana is the same thing. Olam Shana Nefesh, Oshana, right? So Zman v'shana hayakvias hanes ba'adar soif kol hachadashim. We were talking about Esther. And Esther's miracle, right? Esther's miracle, Purim story, took place in Adar. Do you have it? What place? What page?
324.
Esther's miracle happened in Adar. So, being that the time is part of the Bria, so there's significance to the fact that the nest took place at this time and not at that time. It's all about time. So since it's about time and it took place in Adar, what's significant about Adar? It's the end of the year. In other words, biblically speaking, the year starts from Nisan and moves up until Adar. So Adar is year 12, is month 12 of the year. So interesting that Purim comes out on the 12th month. But Nismach, and at the same time, because the calendar is cyclical, so at the same time, it's right before Pesach. Purim is when you have to start Shloshim Yom Kodem Achad. So on the one hand, it's like Mehoidu V'ad Kush. The Gemara has a machlokes. Is Hoidu V'ad Kush right next to each other, or is Hoidu V'ad Kush on two opposite sides of the world? So the answer is Saidu Hach. So if it's right next to each other, it's on two opposite sides of the world. The world is cyclical. The world is round. So Adar, on the one hand, is Purim is on the furthest place that it could be from Pesach. Yud Daled Adar. It was almost the furthest place that it could be. And on the one hand, it's the furthest. On the other hand, it's Shloshim Yom. That's the Hachana of Pesach starts there. You're already holding Pesach dik. You're cleaning for Pesach, doing B'yer Chametz the day after Purim. So it has this double, almost contradictory aspect to it. So Adar Soif Kol HaChadoshim. On the one hand, Adar is the end of all of the months. But Nismach L'Gula de Nisan, and it's close to the Gula of Nisan, Rosh Kol HaChadoshim, which is the beginning, V'chol HaNisim. V'chol HaNisim, all the big miracles happened on Pesach. Shebisham Zachu, and it was from Pesach that we came to Kabbalas HaTorah Shebiksav. So you're getting the map of the holidays. Ubenesta Adar. So now let's analyze it. In the nest, in other words, why is one so far and so close? Why is this at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, and why are they next to each other? That's the Ubenesta Adar Zachul Kabbalas HaTorah Shebal Peh. Let's analyze what took place. What happened on Purim? One of the things that happened on Purim, besides for us being saved, is Kimu v'Kiblu HaYehudim, that we had a new Kabbalas HaTorah on Purim, right? And Dal Yidei Shahadar v'Kiblu Az Me'ava v'Chesed Gadol, the Gemara says in Shabbos, that we were inspired to be Kabbalas HaTorah. It was even more than the inspiration of Kabbalas HaTorah by Yitzias Mitzrayim. So there was a Yitzias Mitzrayim and a Kabbalas HaTorah. There was a Purim story and a Kabbalas HaTorah. Kimu v'Kiblu. Through that Kabbalas HaTorah, the word Zachu de la Yehudim Haisa Oira says in the Megillah, La Yehudim Haisa Oira v'Simcha v'Sasim Vikar. Oira Zu Torah, the Gemara says. So we were Zachu to Torah. Oira Zu Torah. So here's Rabbi Tzadok in a brilliant observation. Torah shebiksav nikra or lashon zachar. The Torah shebal peh nikra oira lashon nekeva nukva. So now the plot thickens.
Or Haganus, where is that?
They'll make it harder. There were two Kabbalas HaTorah. The Kabbalas HaTorah of Shavuos, Haba Aleinu L'Tayvim. The Kabbalas HaTorah of Purim. The Kabbalas HaTorah of Shavuos was a follow-up to Pesach, which was in Nisan. So there was Nisan, Svartam Lachem, and there's a sphere which takes you to Shavuos. So it's the second day of Pesach begins the countdown to Kabbalas HaTorah. So so Kabbalas HaTorah is tied into Yetzias Mitzrayim. Purim, and that's at the beginning of the year. That's how the year starts. At the end of the year, you have another Kabbalas HaTorah, which is really right before the Kabbalas HaTorah, if you're working on a calendar year, which is really right before the Kabbalas HaTorah of Pesach, of Shavuos. And the way most of the Rishonim learn, that it wasn't just a re-acceptance of the Torah, Kabbalas HaTorah, this was Torah Shebiksav and this was Torah Shebal Peh. That's the Pashtus. This is Torah Shebiksav. What does it mean to have Kabbalas HaTorah Shebal Peh? What does it mean? We say the words. What does it mean? Kabbalas HaTorah is Kabbalas HaTorah. It's Torah Sinai or Makabel Torah, Nasa B'Dishma. Makabel the Bris, Makabel the Torah. But there was a special, apparently, recognition, if you will, of the Torah Shebal Peh, the Hainu, that what we can do with the Torah Shebiksav. So it was a special hamokah in the Torah Shebal Peh. You need me? Excuse me one second. I'm sorry.
The difference is, so what's it in the Eila? Pesach time and the Shlit'a started on the evening and then?
So, very good. So let's think this out for a second. Lahudim Haisa Oira and Torah is Or. Torah Or. What's the difference between Or and Oira? One is Zachar, one is Nekeva. What's the difference between Zachar and Nekeva?
Giving and receiving.
Hard to know, but let's say simply put, giving and receiving. Let's say Noisei B'Kabel. Or it always sounds too trite, giving and receiving. But what's really happening in the Zachar Nekeva mashal is seed fertilization of that seed.
Giving and transforming.
Surah. So the Rabbah was very sophisticated and didn't like to say Noisein and Makabel, so he said his words are just throughout the Torah is Chomer B'Tzura. Chomer B'Tzura, which is a Omek Yosef to the Nosein and Makabel, Nosein and Makabel. Chomer B'Tzura. Zebuloi Sakia, the Keva, in terms of procreation, the Keva without a Zachar is nothing, and a Zachar without a Nekeva is nothing. You need two things. There's two aspects to a creation, and that's Chayber and Surah. Every creation has to have Chayber and Surah. So it comes out that Purim is a time of Nukba, Layehudim Haisa Oira. So that's a time of a Bechinam Nekeva. Shechina is Lashon Nekeva. Or is like Eitan Yehuda wants to say, Isarusa de Losata. Don't skip so fast to Isarusa Losata, because let's get there. Otherwise it becomes just a word. It's a nukva. So it's a very interesting thing that on the one hand, the Kabbalah of Torah Shebiksav is on Shavuos, or Nisan Shavuos, Nisan Sifan, is at the beginning of the year, and that's a Bechina of Zachar, Torah Shebiksav. How do you get Torah Shebiksav? Some great person looks up to the Shemayim and gets a Nevuah. Torah Shebiksav. So there's a Bechina of Noisein there, or Chomer. This is the Chomer you have to work with. Even Torah Shebal Peh is a pirush of Torah Shebiksav. It's a fertilization, if you will, of Torah Shebiksav. It's a mabada. It's a processing of Torah Shebiksav through very, very holy and brilliant minds. That's the Ruach HaKodesh and Baskol. So these are, but it's all working with the text. So the text is Zachar, hence the word Torah or, and the Torah Sheba'al Peh is La Yehudim Haisa Oira. So there was two Kabbalas HaTorah. The Kabbalas HaTorah of Nisan, which was Zachar, and there was a Kabbalas HaTorah, a feminine Kabbalas HaTorah of Adar, which was Torah Sheba'al Peh, and they were worlds apart, because from Nisan to Adar you have a whole year. And on the one hand, and on the other hand, it's right there, right? Right as soon as you finish with Adar, because the way Hashem made the Bria of Zman, what goes around comes around. Right? Everything is cyclical, and everything is circular, which unto itself is fascinating, because time, Hashem made time, He could have made it linear. Does that like short circuit your mind? Could have been linear. Why couldn't it be linear? Just we see history repeats itself. You see the calendar repeats itself every year. Nachal, Pesach, Hanukkah, everything. So it's far away and it's close. Let's explain just to understand it better. That if you'll say that Nisan was the ultimate Hisgalus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nisan, Hashem did the Makos, Hashem did Kriyas Yamsuf, Hashem did Yitzias Mitzrayim, took us out into the Midbar. Ultimate Hisgalus Hashem. Very, very little having to do with us. Okay, we brought a Korban Pesach, very little to do with us. It was a defiance, as we said, of Olam. It was a defiance of Shana. Until Matan Torah was a defiance of Nefesh. So, Har Oshan Kulo Olam Shana Nefesh. And then, as the calendar year goes on, we can talk about the history of the Jewish people, but as the calendar year goes on, it goes from spring in Nisan Chodesh Aviv. Aviv is also interesting because Aviv is a lashon of Av. Spring, it's a lashon of Ki Ava Lishloach. Spring is a masculine spring fever. It's a masculine season. Spring. So as the months go on, it gets darker and darker. There's less and less Hisgalus Hashem. It gets darker physically. It becomes winter. The days get shorter. You get from there. You get to Tisha B'av. From Tisha B'av, you get to Chanukah, and it goes lower and lower and lower until it comes up again on Adar. Adar, the lights start to come out on again, both from a climatic point of view, but from a ruchnius point of view. All of a sudden, so what happens is that this is life. Life is that it starts off with the Hisgalus Hashem, and everything's a gift. And then the gift starts to wither because we need to get it on our own. We need to take it. We need to process it. So the Zachar has to. The Zachar comes with great koach and great merits, but it doesn't take 9 months. The Zachar is just, gross a koach, and he's gone. Whereas the Bechina of Nukva is a processing, which is a long processing. It's a forever process, processing for the rest of their life, right? So it was today Mother's Day, yesterday's Mother's Day. I have to speak about this, very important. Happy Mother's Day. So by the time it comes to Tisha B'av, it's getting darker and darker, but what's really happening is that the Or Galui of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is diminishing, and the Or Hanekeva, meaning the Or of processing, what are you doing with that is getting bigger. So we move on from Torah Shebiksav to Torah Sheba'al Peh. You with me on this? So basically the process of, we accept Torah Shebiksav, okay, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha. What are we doing with the Torah Shebiksav? Gets us to Rav and Abaya. That's a Kabbalah, Pashat Pshat. It gets us to where we are in the base Medrash, trying to understand the Jewish way of understanding Torah Shebiksav is through Torah Shebal Peh.
This is like white light going in, a prism, and colored light coming out.
Except I don't know if there's processing. I mean, is that a good, or is it's a Tein L'Chacham V'Yichach Mod. You know, it's you know, everyone knows the famous example of this is the Gemara Menachos, that Moshe Rabbeinu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Moshe Rabbeinu a vision of Rabbi Akiva. And he didn't even understand what Rabbi Akiva was saying. Cholash Daita, the Gemara says. So it means to say that Moshe, in this language, was a Bechina of Zachar, and or at least he was the first Makabel. It was very close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is Zachar. And Rabbi Akiva was the father of Torah Shebal Peh. So Moshe beat Rabbi Akiva meet Moshe. So there's so much between them. There's so much between Moshe Rabbeinu and Rabbi Akiva. But at the same time, what does Rabbi Akiva say in the Gemara? The Talmudim say, Rabbi, how do you know that? So he brings it back. So this is Adar coming back to Nisan. So far apart, Adar and Nisan, but so close together. So this is I'm describing here a geometric concept called a circle. What comes around goes around. Does anybody know what that means, by the way? It's one of those things everybody says. Amazing things that people say. I've been thinking about it lately. I remember the first time somebody said to me, "There's many ways to skin a cat." You know? Okay, if you say so. What goes around comes around. Comes around, goes around. However it goes. So in the brilliance of Rabbi Tzadok, we go from Or, Torah Shebiksav, to Oira, which is Torah Shebal Peh. Okay, power, right? Clear. Ubenesta Adar Zachal Kabbalas HaTorah Shebal Peh, Dal Yidei Shahadar V'Kiblu Az Mi'ava V'Cheshek Gadol Zachal Del Yehudim Haisa Oira, Zu Torah V'Torah Shebiksav Nikra Or, Lashon Zachar, V'Torah Shebal Peh, Ora Nukva. Let's remember that for the rest of our lives. Torah Shebal Peh is called Oira, Torah Shebiksav is called Or. Ki Yadua, as it says in the Zohar, the Torah Shebiksav v'Shebal Peh, before in the Zohar, Heim Soid Zachar v'Nekeva Shazu Mekabelas v'Nishpas Mizu. So clear in the Zohar that Shebiksav is Zachar and Torah Shebal Peh is Nekeva. V'Leisle Migarmei Klum Unekia Ba'a. Leisle Migarmei Klum is going on what? Unekia Ba'a. Meaning, before, meaning Torah Shebal Peh is the Nukva. The Nukva has no way on its own to produce a child. It requires a Torah Shebiksav. So she's barren until there's a Zachar. Clear. There's no Eitzah. Kimat. There's no Eitzah. Rak masha nekes umekabelas chachma mitar shebiksav she chachmasa yisbarach shmai. And that's the pshat. Yoiv l'chachimim sheyachachmu oid l'hoisif chachma. Yoiv chachma l'chachimim. It comes from a pasuk in Parshas Tetzaveh. L'kol chacham leiv nasan chachma. They're building the Mishkan. So l'chol chacham leiv nasan chachma. So the chacham leiv, the chachma of Bezalel, let's say, was that he was a makabel. Leisle migarmei klum. He has nothing of his own. It had to be a nevuah, and it was a nevuah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. On the other hand, the nevuah itself can't work. There's no nevuah of how the Mishkan looked. You need a Bezalel. So building that Mishkan was a perfect example of the Ishtadfus of Zachar and Nekeva in the Mishkan.
Based on that marshal, that can you be saying that the Torah was less with the house?
That's correct. What's the Torah if it's not learned? And then once we understand that, let's say it deeper. What's the Torah if it's not processed? So what's Torah Shebiksav without Torah Shebal Peh? I was thinking once that years ago, probably 30 years ago or something, I was invited to a federation meeting in upstate New York. So this was the first time anybody had discovered, I don't know if it was 30, you know the history better than me, but it was the first time anybody discovered that there were Jews in Ethiopia. So somebody came to give a presentation, one of these world traveler people, and he said he found this cat of Jews in Ethiopia, or falashas as they called them in those days. And he's trying to get the federations of the United States to help this people, this Jewish cat, and bring them to Israel. So okay, now Ethiopians work in the supermarket. We don't like that's 30, 35 years later. They need a gerus, they don't need a gerus. But at that time it was like a new concept. So this guy was describing, I just always remember this fellow was describing, wasn't a firm guy, he was describing to the Federation. I was invited to this meeting, usually rabbis didn't come to this meeting, certainly not Orthodox rabbis, but I was invited. So listening to this presentation, he was talking about how they do certain things, they do bris milah, they do certain Jewish, not only the men do bris milah, the women also do bris milah. They do... They don't eat pig. A lot of them don't eat pig, and a lot of them have a day that they keep Shabbos. And he was describing that this is a very Jewish thing. It is Afal Pi. He said that many of them wear crosses around the neck. By the way, see, was that many Ethiopians wear crosses? That's just because the church came in at some point and tried to missionize to them and witness to them, and many of them were accepting Christianity. But it doesn't mean they're not Jewish; they're Jewish. So, and you can see by all the different mitzvahs that they keep. So every bunch of people in the federation. I was the only one there in the room wearing a yarmulke. So the president of the federation said, "Rabbi, what do you think of this?" Now, why? Let's understand this. Why would they want to ask a rabbi almost? They don't ask a rabbi anything else. It's nothing that this is a group of people is interested in, certainly not an Orthodox rabbi's opinion. Why all of a sudden it was covenant Torah, they have covenant Torah. Because if they accept that these people are Jewish, they have to give them money. So now, like, Rabbi, what's your opinion? Maybe we can get out of this. Do you hold there's a Jewish? They figure. And why did they invite me? It was this scholar. They figured who's going to be the most machmir and saying that they're not Jewish is going to be an Orthodox rabbi. So they invited Dafka, the Orthodox rabbi, who doesn't let everybody come in and say that they're Jewish, to paskin for them, and save them a couple $100,000 a year. This particular. So Nasan Nehem B. Everybody's like, what are you? So trying to formulate something intelligent to say at that moment, I said, you give many examples. I asked the presenter, you give many examples of different, mitzvahs they keep, albeit wrongly, but they try to keep Shabbos, try to keep Milah, try to keep kosher. They do it wrongly, but they. So I said, is there any part of Torah Shebal Peh that they keep? Is there anything like Torah Shebal Peh that we know only from Torah Shebal Peh? For instance, a bris milah, the way we do it. Do they wear tefillin as we know it? Anything, any one thing in Torah Shebal Peh that they do. So the presenter, Torah Shebal Peh, it's Talmud is not really the same as the Chumash, and that such comes later with the rabbis, and they made a mist all that. So no. The Torah Shebal Peh is the Jewish. Any group of people in the world could grab a Bible, and they have, and make a religion out of it. It's a good book. Take the Bible and come together, make a religion. Like once I read it, they can argue about it. They can turn. What then is Christianity? Take the Bible. It's out. It's Miskala Lakol. Anybody can take the Bible and make a religion. So what makes somebody uniquely Jewish? Like if there's do they do some Jewish interpretation that they try to keep Shabbos, like the Tzedukim kept Shabbos, but do they eat cholent? That was like, what do they eat cholent? Are they Jewish? Of course, you couldn't find even one Jewish thing that they did just biblical things, so the Federation applauded me, and they went home, and the Ethiopians hated me. So that's the, but anyway, I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm sure many people have done a lot of research. I was talking to Baisa Shaya, like when it first came out, he gave out this black and white, mimeograph, blue and white mimeograph. I think that's how long ago this was, to show the different mitzvahs that they do. What's the point? That the point I'm making is that the zachar b'loy nekeva ha b'loy ha lo tell you. The pshat in Yiddishkeit is that there's a disarusa de la'ela and there's an disarusa de l'sata, that there's a zachar and a nekeva, there's a fertilization, there's a processing of the Torah Shabbat. That's what makes us Jewish. Should we learn Tanakh? Of course you should learn Tanakh. If you don't learn Tanakh, so you don't have but it's not. That's not Yiddishkeit. The Yiddishkeit is not Yiddishkeit unto itself. Yiddishkeit is about the processing. So if you have Nisan, in the terms that we're learning now, if you have Nisan and you don't have Adar, so you have a Kabbalah, you don't have a Kimu v'Kiblu, and it's so fascinating that the Kimu v'Kiblu of Torah Shabbat Peh, as the Zohar says, the Bechinas Nukva happened right before the founding of the Anshe Knesset Agdola, which were really the first, the first sprouts of Torah Shabbat Peh as we understand it. Until then, it was Tanakh. That was the canonization of Tanakh by Ezra and Nehemiah and the Anshe Knesset Agdola, and the new sprout of now we're going to be Mefalpul in the Tanakh, which ended, as I said on Shabbos, that cycle ended with Rabbi Kiva v'Talmido, or specifically with Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the Talmud of Rabbi Kiva. So that's on the processing end. The processing of Torah Shabbat and Torah Shabbat Peh also got out of hand. So Rabbi Kiva had to canonize that. So just like we learned last week that Esther was saying, "Let me in. I still want to be part of the Torah Shabbat. Let me be from the Bechina of Zachar, not from the Bechina of Nekeva." So the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva is saying, we still want to be from the Bechina of Nekeva, we still want to be today. Let's make new halachas, let's make new mishnas. No, sorry, it's over. It's canonized. So we have a nice, neat package now of the 2,000 years of Torah. That's the Alpayim Shana of Torah, which started with the Nevuos of Avraham Avinu, Zachar, ended with Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, or the Nevuos of Rabbi Akiva. Nekeva, you have Zachar Nekeva, you have Latin, here we are. Can come the Geula. Hence Rabbi Akiva thought that the Geula should have come. Okay. The next point. That's the pshat. I just want to finish the thought that by Betzalel, Hashem nasan l'chachma, l'chol chachma leim nasan Hashem chachma. It's Lashon. That Hashem could give chachma to only He who has chachma that can process it. And now we get into something, so that's easy. Let's just it brings a Kabbalah thing here, which we don't have to go into too deeply, mainly because I'm unqualified. But let's just understand the basics of it. This we can all understand. Umitzad ha'igulim shuhu soid or hamakiv ki yadua. The Arizal and the Eitz Chaim tells us that there is such a thing as igulim. Now, we're talking about Adar being close to Nisan. That's a circle. So the Or Hamakiv works in igulim. Unot sofa betchilasa. This all comes from the Sefer Yitzir. The smuchin zelazeh b'choshrin chalila. Okay, let's just very basic. You can say like most charts do, that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, so you have the Keser, which is beyond our understanding, right? Chachma, Bina, and then you have the seven spheros that we can relate to, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, and that stuff. So you can look at it as a top-down model, and then come to Malchus. Right? That's the way most of the charts work. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus comes down to it. Easy to digest. In reality, says the Sefer Yitzira, it doesn't go like that. It goes as igulim. It goes as circles. So it's not really Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. It's more of a holographic model where it's coming from top to down. It's Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus, in circles. Why does it have to be in circles? Because Zman, because all of this, that Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus doesn't talk about Zman. It only talks about Olam. So what about Shanas? So Zman is circular. So it has to come in Zman. Yeshoimrim, I don't know that people that study these things say that it's not even disconnected. It's more of a spiral. So if you imagine HaKadosh Baruch Hu creating the world, it's like Lahavdil dropping a slinky down, and here you have Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus. I don't believe, by the way, that the Arizal says that. I just don't think he says that. I don't think he talks about the spheros, the Gulam spheres being connected one to the other. I don't think so.
How would that work in terms of the circles if you have like Netzach and Hod on the same level, so to speak, usually it's two circles are one same thing?
Right. They're only on the same level on that chart.
Yeah,
So there's two different concepts here. So one concept is, do you want to hear this? One concept is called, they're both true. They're just two separate things. I'm explaining two different things. One's called Koimas Ha'adam. So Koimas Ha'adam is, as it relates to us, let's say, so Netzach and Hod are in the same, and Chesed and Gvura are on the same level. But in terms of the Gulim, it's Zeh Bifnim B'Zeh. They're all on the same level. In other words, I don't know that the Arizal talks about the slinky dropping. What that does is it combines the two concepts of Igulim and Koimas Ha'adam. If you don't know what I'm talking about, so you're exactly the same Madrega as me. I also don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just telling you the math. This is the way it works. But let's understand. But from a graphic point of view, at least we can understand it. So everybody has seen. Got to get that board up there. Everybody has seen everybody knows what concentric circles look like. So let's not go to the place where they're attached one to the other, because in my mind that complicates everything. I don't think they have to be attached. I'll tell you why. There's HaKadosh Baruch Hu where we don't go, and we certainly don't understand. Kabbalah, at least you can learn. HaKadosh Baruch Hu you can learn. It wasn't given to us. Is infinity, Ein Sof. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Ein Sof, his infinity is not something we can conceive of, and it's not something which makes any sense to be in this world. Everything in the world can be measured. If it can be measured, it's not infinite. It's a contradiction. So this is called in Kabbalistic language the Ein Sof, which in the metaphor of the circles of the Igulim is the Or Hamakif. These are important terms. Or Hamakif means that if I would draw for you here, see the circles, let's say 7 circles, then outside of the circle, meaning beyond the human experience, out there, is the infinity, which is the Or Hamakif. We don't know what it means. We don't know what it means. We don't relate to it, nor do we need to relate to it. We need to relate to this world. This is where we live. Just to know that there's such a thing that we don't understand. Ein yidiyasenu, like the Rambam says about Shabbos. Ein yidiyasenu ki yidiyasei. What we call, just because we don't know it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Something we need to get in our heads. So this outside line of Or Makif is something that's beyond our comprehension. Now here's the chap. What's the kesher between that outside circle of Or Makif and us in here, in the world of Malchus? The answer is that we're told by the Sefer Yetzirah that there's a kav. The Or Makif enters into the Igulim. So if you have your circles, imagine a break in the circle and a line going through it, coming from top to bottom. What this line is doing is it's taking Ein Sofiyut, infinity, and injecting them into the spheros and calling that eternity. So there's an infinity through this kav So there's the Or Makif, and the Or Makif has a kav, and the kav goes straight through. That's why I say it can't be a spiral. Yeah, sure. Spiral. It could be circles with a split. Okay, so that's the Kabbalistic chart. Much more difficult, I find, to understand than the simple chart of Komas Adam. So that's why I wrote a book on Spheres Komas Adam and not Spheres Igulim. But Igulim takes into consideration Zman. And Zman is Be'igul. So says the Sefer Yetzirah, this is all I want to say today. Says the Sefer Yetzirah that interesting thing about Zman, Na'utz Seifa V'tchilasa, that the beginning hits the end. It's not linear. Could have been linear. Could have been Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, but it goes B'Zman. So hence we have a calendar. What's the calendar called? What's the calendar year called in Hebrew? A Shana. A Shana means what? To repeat, right? To repeat. Shoyne halachis b'chol yom. It's Aleph, Shnayim, Sheni. It's a repetition of one. It's 1, 2. So Shana. So what do we have from all of this? That we understand that when it comes to the igul of any midah, when it comes to the circle of any midah, there's a process that goes on. I'm going to bring this right down to earth. There's an infinity that gets injected. So imagine Har Sinai, very simple. Imagine Har Sinai. There's an element of infinity in Torah. It's brought down to Moshe on Har Sinai. What an operation this was. It's an amazing operation. Moshe Rabbeinu taught Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai. Masr Yeshua, Yeshua L'Skenim Lanchik, Nevi'im Lanchik, Nesses Hagdolah. What Achik Nesses Hagdolah, now let's start processing it. So basically the circle came all the way around, and Rabbi Akiva comes along and he says that, you know where I got all this from? Halach L'Moshe Mishnah, he's right next to me. Right next to you, there's a whole process of your Hillel, Shammai, Yishmaya, Avtalia, what took place between Moshe Rabbeinu, not to mention all the Nevi'im, and all of the different David HaMelech and the wars. I'm right there with Moshe Rabbeinu. That's why, because I'm the Sof of the canonization. This is, by the way, if you were here for the Pirkei Avos Shir, this is the Obed Kadavar, which I didn't want to get involved with in the Pirkei Avos Shir. The Kabbalah of it is that Rabbi Akiva had to canonize it because it was the end of the circle. And now we're up to the next Sphira. Sphira, what comes after 2,000 years of Torah, 2,000 years of, which is Malchus. So he was at the end, there was a Netzach, Yisoid, bringing it down to earth, circle, and Rabbi Akiva said, I know that this is the Zman of Mashiach. I know that this is the Zman of Mashiach, but at the end, he continued, he had the Torah continue with the Sanhedrin of Usha, so with his 5 Talmidim. So hence Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, etc. But that's all in Malchus already. That's no longer in the Bechina of this circle. We're already starting a new circle.
Where does the unshakenness of the Gedolah come from? I mean, I always have trouble figuring out how did it start.
Chorban Beis Hamikdash. Here's the story. Here's the way it works. It's a very good question, actually. You'll look through Jewish history, and you'll see that after every major calamity and crisis, there was a gathering of information, clarification of information, and it was put forth for the people to digest because of all the confusion. After the Spanish expulsion and Inquisition, what came out? The Shulchan Aruch. It has to be Shulchan Aruch lefanach. There's no Shulchan Aruch. What do? Everybody did what they thought they should do before there was a Shulchan Aruch. Let me put it all in one place. Shulchan Aruch, Ramah, it was a whole new genre of Torah, of Shulchan Aruch, Shulchan Aruch Yid, of Shulchan Aruch, Ramah. There was no such thing. after the Crusades of the 12th century, what came out? The Rambam. The Rambam said it's time to bring it all together and make it simple for everybody to learn. So what it means is, by the way, it's not just the Shulchan Aruch. It wasn't just the Shulchan Aruch. It was the Arizal. Everybody in the 14th century, 13th, 14th century. I'm sorry, the Arizal was earlier, but everybody the time of the Shulchan Aruch basically were codifying all the information, because you look at all the Sfarim from that generation. Everything became completely unwieldy and unmanageable because of the crisis that took place. So what happened with the Churban Beis Hamikdash was that the Torah, the line of Torah, became extremely unclear, and this can only lead to assimilation and arguments and siluk hashchina. So just like the Shulchan Aruch came about after the Spanish Inquisition, and the Rambam came out after the Crusades, you see, after all the major pogroms, and after the Holocaust, even after the Holocaust. Look at the renaissance of Jewish publishing that has taken place after the Holocaust. It's largely compilations of information. It was taking all the information, which was so disparate, so hard to get to, and creating Encyclopedia Talmudis and Stei Chemed, and eventually, the internet, encircles. This is all everybody's focus, most people's focus in the post-Holocaust was different than. That's why it's not called there was the Tanoim, Amoraim, or Anshe Knesset Agdola, Tanoim, Amoraim, Rishonim, Achronim. What the heck are we? And it seems to be Muskam, Sofim or Osfim.
Yeah, Osfim.
Just collecting those pieces. It seems to be everybody's masking that the Tkufa of the Achronim, if there was such a thing, like I call it the Tachtonim. The Tkufa of the Achronim ended with the Holocaust. So it was Bakasher, because it's always a crisis of earth-shattering magnitude, which ends a Tkufa. And a new tkufa starts. What's the tkufa after that? I'll pick up the pieces. Let's see. So that's exactly what the Shulchan Aruch did. That's what we have to do, and that's what we did. You see, that's what the Gedolim did immediately after. Just to pick up the pieces and try to put it together and try to make it in a way that everybody can.
It's that same kav comes from.
Same kav, though. Exactly right. It's the same kav, but a new circle in the kav. So the vision becomes clear. So the Anshe Knesset Agdola is the ultimate example of this. It was the end of the Tkufas HaNeviim. They had to decide who's in and who's not in. Because somebody would say, oh, it's a pasuk in Yeshaya. Somebody would say, oh, it's a pasuk in Jupiter. It's a pasuk. We have our Svarim Chitzaidim. So what do the Anshe Knesset Agdola say? Bishut Sanhedrin. Kol she'oisik b'Svarim HaChitzaidim ein lo chelech le'olam haba. Keep going to Sefer Ben Sira. But Sira was a book that could have been canonized. They had Megillas of Yeshayahu. They had Megillas of like we have a Megillas Esther. They had Megillas and they said this is it. This is not Ruach Kodshim. That's what they said. But they put it all together. So we have a Tanakh, nice, neat, beautiful package. You can buy it. You can put it in your pocket. You can put it on your iPhone. It's a Tanakh. But if they didn't make a Tanakh, look what would have happened. Yeah, but I have another source. See, the Christians, at the end didn't accept the canonization of Rabbi Akiva. They just kept on going, and hence, so it becomes while we're talking history and politics, you see, this is what the Gedolei Hador need to be careful about. The Gedolim in every generation, more than giving brachos or telling us who to vote for. The real job of the Gedolei Hador is to determine for everybody with their Chachma and their Ruach HaKodesh what's part of the Masorah and what's not part of the Masorah. Now, of course, it's a blurry area, but what's part of the Masorah, what's not part of the Masorah. Either the Grub, it was a big Gaon. He's even called the Vilna Gaon, right? It was much deeper than being a Gaon. The Gra, the Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Tanya, they were Masadrim after Shabtai Tzvi. The big calamity there, the big crisis in Klal Yisrael was Shabtai Tzvi. I know we don't have even a minute to talk about it, but it was an unbelievable crisis in Klal Yisrael. It needed, and stuff got in that had no kesher to Yiddishkeit at all. Christian things, Buddhist things. I mean, this man Shabtai Tzvi, grabbed from anywhere, called it Kabbalah. There was Abalafi Kabbalah, this kind of Kabbalah. So came the Gra. The Gra's job was to determine what's in, what's not in. Most of the Gra's work, I mean, needless to say, knew how to learn, understatement. But he knew how to learn, but he was able to look at a Yerushalmi or a Zohar and say, this is right, no, this Girsa was changed by the Shabtai Tzvi people. This was changed in history, and he brought everything back to its place. That was the whole point of the Gra, accuracy in Masorah. That's why it was so important to the Baal Tanya to be accepted by the Gra, because if the Gra is going to say Chassidus is out, that means that Chassidus is part of the whole Shabtai Tzvi thing. That's why they came to see him. And the Gra didn't want, So the Gra even acknowledged these could be great tzaddikim, but if it's not it's not the real thing. It's not part of our Masorah. So it's really the same thing as we're talking about. In other words, the Gra was the Anshe Knesset Agdolah of his generation. It's as simple as that. And who are the Gedolim today? It's hard, It's a hard thing to say. Maybe you got to wait like 100 years to look back and say who are the Gedolim of today. But I have a lot to say on the subject. But the point is, the purpose of the Gedolim is to keep that spiral going, or those circles going. Keep the Ein Sofiot, and making sure that it's all part attached to the Kav. And once it's attached to the Kav, then we can move to the next circle, which is the circle of Malchus, Torah Shebiksav, Torah Shebal Peh, Anshe Knesset Agdolah, Rabbi Talmidei, Rabbi Akiva, etc. Ravina Ravashi, that was a tkufa. Rishonim was a tkufa. Okay.
All leads to Mashiach.
That's for Malchus.
Yeah.
Because of Malchus.